Welcome back in my chair. It is Monday. By the time I hit post, it may be as late as Thursday. Today's topic is the direction of this channel. There is endless content on snake drafts and suggested rounds to pick different players. What I want to claim on this fantasy football Monopoly board is going to be auction drafts, where you are given a budget, generally $200, and you have to outbid your league mates to draft the team that you think can win a championship. But first, we have some exciting news. And by we, I mean me. An Equipment Room is now an LLC, and this is actually the third channel, if you will, of An Equipment Room. Started out on Instagram, which has very few followers still, and it was just to bring folks to buy the helmets that I make, like seen behind me. However, we have our first sponsor in the Woods Transportation. Gave me a Nike Dry Fit, as well as hooking us up with NFL Sunday Ticket this year. The Woods Transportation hauls RVs, boats, and trailers for folks. That is not their tagline necessarily. That is mine that I just came up with. But specializing in the Midwest, actually out of Minnesota, do a lot of work in Wisconsin and Iowa, but are developing contacts nationwide. So if you have a boat, a camper, or a trailer that's maybe too big for your vehicle, or you don't have the time or the know-how or want to put the effort into moving it, give the Woods Transportation a call or an email and see what they can do for you. In the past, when it would be draft day and I would be at work and my coworkers would find out that the draft I'm doing that evening is an auction draft, they would often express interest that they've always wanted to try one, but don't really know how it works. And it is so much more fun, in my opinion. You just have a lot more control of what happens with your team. For instance, maybe you want that top guy. Let's say you really want Ja'Marr Chase this year, but the snake draft comes around and you draw the 6th overall pick in your 10-team draft. Ja'Marr Chase is not going to be there. The auction style draft allows you to guarantee that you get that top player as long as you are willing to bid $1 more than the second highest bidder. Of course, then you will have far less money to spend on building the rest of your team. And that's where you kind of have to have a game plan, which will really deep dive in further videos for strategy. But today, I'm going to touch on just a basic setting up a strategy going into draft night. The first thing we're going to do today is just look at formatting your league. What are the rules? What are the lineups? So in order to make things as seamless as possible, just in hitting the nuts and bolts of the auction draft, I'm going to use the same format that ESPN lays out on those player cheat sheets that have the recommended values next to each player. So the rankings and those recommended values for auction drafts are based on a 10-team league with 1 starting quarterback, 2 starting running backs, 2 starting wide receivers, 1 starting tight end, 1 regular flex player, meaning running back, wide receiver, or tight end, 1 defense and special teams, 1 kicker, and then 7 bench players. And you will have $200, and we are going to require $1 per player in our draft. The next thing I'm going to show you is setting up a draft board so we can follow along as far as player selections. So once you have your board set up and you have determined the order of nominations, which would be just the order of picks in a snake draft, the 101 is going to make a nomination. So in the board I put together, Team 1 with the first nomination chose running back Jahmyr Gibbs. They ran the auction. The highest bidder ended up being Team 5. So Team 5 gets Gibbs. Now the second nomination will go to Team 2. Now you'll see in that yellow column under Team 1, I just put a number 1 there. If you are doing this with a board and a marker, we usually just do a tally so we always know who made previous nomination. And now the easiest way to do it is just now Team 2 makes their nomination, and then Team 3, and so on. When we get to Team 10, rather than doing it in a snake style, we typically just go all the way back to Team 1 to start round 2. Depending on the speed of your auctions, we will typically take a break every 2 or 3 rounds so that people use the bathroom, get another cocktail, but this also gives everyone time to do money checks, see how much they have left. That way, when you get toward the end of the draft and you have 3 bench spots to fill, you want to make sure, if you have a $1 minimum per player, that everyone has $3 to spend. If you are in a league with me, I'm keeping an updated spreadsheet as we go, so I can say, nope, you do not have enough money to bid on that player. And typically that player would go back into the pool. But you want to catch this early on, so when someone's bidding on a $47 player, if you're like me and you have your spreadsheet going, I know that the person I'm bidding against can only spend $46. And if I still have $50 that I can spend on one player, I know that that player is going to be in my starting lineup. Typically, as the draft goes along, it will speed up because you do not have as many people bidding on bench players, and they're typically going for less than $5, whereas you might have 7 or 8 people bidding on those top dogs, those top running backs and wide receivers. Once your auction fills up, if you have, let's say Team 3 is already have all their players, they are no longer going to be nominating players. They can go home. They're all done. And sometimes you might have a team not spend all their money. So let's say that they have $20 left over. We usually just give them that percentage of their league buy-in back. So we actually spend $200 to get into our league. That person would get $20 back to take home with them. So their buy-in was only $180. That being said, that person probably should have invested that $20 into their top player to increase their chances of winning the league. As the draft goes on, you'll see that there might be 1 or 2 teams that are spending a lot of their money early to get those top players. In this case, there has been 3 nominations, and Team 3 has 2 of those players. A lot of times you might get through 1 or 2 rounds and there might be a team that has spent $0 yet. They're hanging on to everything. What then happens is that they get caught with a starting lineup full of mid-round players. And then teams like Team 3 with the studs spend the entire middle of the draft just waiting because those mid-round players are out of their budget. So, for instance, in this next graphic we're looking at, Team 3 just picked up a quarterback, and then Team 8 finally started spending, and a lot of times Team 8 will actually fill their roster before Team 3. What often ends up happening then is a team like Team 8 will have a $20 running back in their starting spot, and then on the bench they'll be having a $20 running back just sitting there. They can only play one, and they have to make that decision each week, whereas Team 3 has the $40 running back in that starting spot. If that $40 running back goes down, then they probably are filling in with a $1 running back, which is not as good as Team 8's $20 running back fill-in. So studs and duds, there is risk involved, but me personally, I'm trying to put out the most potent lineup I can each week, and obviously there are risks that go with that if someone goes down, which is why people get handcuffs. Next, we're going to do just some real basic strategy as far as setting up your game plan going into draft night. So what I typically do is I take my $200 budget and then I will delegate it to positions. So I am all about studs and duds. So my starters are top notch, and then bench players I fill in with guys that may just be replaced as the waiver wire goes along in the season. I personally do not spend much on bench players. To me, if I have money to spend on bench players, I should have put those additional dollars that are remaining toward the top stars. So in this kind of template that I have built, in this scenario, I'm not spending on quarterback. I know going into this draft, if I stick to this plan, I'm not getting a Josh Allen, a Jalen Hurts. I am going with good wide receivers, strong running backs, and I really want a good tight end. So in this case, I have $70 budgeted for running backs. I have $80 for wide receivers. I have $25 at tight end, and then just going down the list. So for the sake of today, we're just going to say that each player on my team, I won for the exact value that is on that cheat sheet that I showed by ESPN. That is based on a 10-team league. If you have a 12-team league, expect to spend more money on each player up top, as the top-heavy guys tend to go for more because now you have 12 people bidding on these same great players, and there's just 2 players more times $200. We have $400 more in that pool to compete. Okay, so let's say Baseball Steve, the guy sitting next to me, nominated Saquon Barkley. I have $70 that I budgeted for running backs. Let's say I spend $55 on Saquon Barkley. Now I have $15 to spend on that RB2 spot. Let's say the next person to nominate, my buddy Brett, nominates tight end George Kittle. I have $25 set aside for tight end. And boom, I win George Kittle with a bid of $21. I now have a $4 surplus, in which case I'm just going to pencil that extra $4 into my flex spot. So I had previously budgeted $11 for a flex player. Now, since I saved $4 at tight end, I'm going to put that $4 at flex. I now have $15 there that I can spend. So we fast forward into the night, we go a couple rounds. We had $70 to spend at running back, $55 on Saquon. We end up landing James Conner for $15. We go to wide receiver, we get Nico Collins for $45. So we only have $35 to spend within that $80 budget. Now let's say Brian Thomas is being auctioned off and someone who's already got Malik Neighbors or they got Jamar Chase is at $42, and you just cannot let him get Brian Thomas Jr. for $42. So you bid him up. You say 43, and you assume that guy's going to go 44, and he does not. So you are stuck with Brian Thomas Jr. Congratulations, that's an awesome player, and $43 is a good price, but you are now over your budget. So I'm going to go back to that flex spot. We had originally $11, and then we saved $4 on George Kittle, so it went up to $15. Well, we just went $8 or $7 or $8 over our budget, so now that's got to come out of flex. So now we're down to $7 or $8 at flex that we can spend. So now you're getting into the late rounds, and you find out that this $1 player minimum goofed you up at some point. So what happened is I had $5 at quarterback and only ended up spending $3 on Baker Mayfield. So with my last pick, I actually have $2, and I want Tyler Warren as my backup tight end. I'm going to nominate him for $2, because if I nominate him for $1 and someone bids me up to $2, I can't get him. I can't bid to $3. But typically at this point in the draft, it becomes a snake draft for whoever is just available. You're just nominating a player for $1 and no one else has $2 to bid on it. So that is typically how you end up filling your draft board at the end of the night. Again, this is just one template going into your draft. Maybe you do want a Josh Allen or a Lamar Jackson. So rather than having $70 at running back, maybe you're hoping to get two $20 running backs or $25 running backs so that you can allocate, an extra $25 toward quarterback. Or maybe you're okay taking a flyer at, a $1 to $5 tight end. Now you have some more money that you can spend on two stud receivers or that better quarterback. So set it up how you want, but it is good to have an idea of where you want to spend your money so that you can capitalize on some of those top players and making that championship lineup. So that is all for today. Thanks again to our sponsor, The Woods Transportation. Give them a call for your next haul. Have a good one.